Tonight, you fall asleep in the year when the desert still belongs to gods and kings. The air is dry enough to drink, each breath carrying the taste of sand and sun-baked stone. Somewhere far away, the Nile sighs in the dark, its slow voice lost to the rustle of palm fronds and the whisper of wind against the mud-brick walls. The stars hang low, bright as copper hammered thin, and the moon leans close enough to see the lines on your face. You are not a king, not a priest, not a name anyone will carve in gold. You are a pair of hands, calloused and cracked, given to the service of eternity. Your work is hidden, swallowed by walls of stone, sealed with the bones of the dead. When the pharaoh sleeps forever, he will do so in chambers you carved. No one will know your name. No one will think to ask. But for now you lie in the quiet heat of night, the smell of dust still clinging to your skin, and the weight of tomorrow pressing in. The sand shifts against the door. Somewhere, an old reed mat creaks under another restless sleeper. You close your eyes. Morning will come. It always does. You wake to the sound of the reed mat speaking in small, tired creaks, a voice made of frayed fibers and old dust. The night is still thick, a dark cloth pressed over the village, but there is a paler seam where the horizon will open its mouth and swallow stars. You lie on your side the way your back insists you must, knees tucked, hands folded into themselves, as if you could hide the ache inside your knuckles by making them smaller. The floor is hard, baked mud, warm from the day, then cooling too fast and holding that chill the way a jar holds water. There is grit against your cheek and grit between your teeth and grit behind your eyelids. You know the taste of the day before you live it, because it never really leaves you. Dust follows you home. Dust tucks you in. The room is narrow, the kind of narrow that teaches you to measure yourself sideways. The walls keep their secrets, stains you know as landscapes, hairline cracks that you have charted like river branches. Each one tells you where the sun leans hardest, where the wind has picked a favourite corner to whisper to, where the last rain, 2 years ago, or was it 3, found a way in and left a brown kiss that looks like a crow's wing. Your sleeping mat is shared when it must be, but tonight there is only the long breathing of the next room, and a child's soft cough keeping time like a small drum. A clay lamp has gone out and left the room to the moon. Thin light seeps in through the doorway curtain, linen that used to be a tunic, its hem stiff with salt from sweat and river water. You have seen enough sun to be grateful for this thin pooling silver. The moon makes the floor look like it is made of chilled milk, and your calloused feet, when you move them, sound like leather dragged over pottery. You sleep here because you do not belong to the house of the dead. You build it. The dead sleep on stone, carved like breath. You sleep on reed and mud, in a box of brick that warms too quickly and cools without mercy. You are not jealous of them. Exactly. Their silence is a ruler's silence, bought with years of rations and the law of someone else's body. But you know the difference between a chamber where incense will burn forever and a room where sweat is the only perfume. You know the difference between a ceiling painted with stars and a roof that sweats when the night turns wet. The roof is an animal. It shifts above you, holds its breath, releases it in little softings of dust that find your hair like ash. You keep a palm over your mouth when you turn because you have learned not to swallow the roof. The air tastes of yesterday's beer and the river filtered through people. There is a jar near the doorway with a mouth too small for thirst, and beside it the bowl with a chip your thumb nose without looking. You have arranged your life into reach. The strip of linen for your head, the braided cord for your waist, the sandals with straps you tied too quickly, so they always loosen at the heel by noon. A copper chisel sleeps against the wall wrapped in cloth. You count its weight the way other men count children. When it is sharp, the world feels possible. When it is dull, the world is a door you cannot push open. You close your eyes, but you are awake. That is a thing that happens more often, as if sleep were an animal that comes when it pleases, and only if your stillness is convincing. You try to bargain by listening harder. Outside, a night wind moves over the village, like a careful hand smoothing the hair of a fevered child. It finds the gap under the door curtain and kneels by your mat. The wind is always kind before dawn. Later it will fill with sand and hiss at you like a knife. For now it smells of the river's dark belly. Somewhere a donkey nudges a wooden post, and the rope whispers back. The world has a small, patient pulse at this hour. Even your heart seems to slow down to be polite. You think of the tomb, though you try not to. You have learned to keep work out of your sleeping, but the mind is a weak gatekeeper. It lets in what it should not. You picture the corridor you will descend again, a throat of stone swallowing you and the men beside you, the lamps making islands of light in a sea of uncarved dark. You smell the stone dust before you taste it. You hear the foreman's voice, that clipped way of speaking that says the day is a rope and he is the hand at the end of it. You tell yourself not yet, and the word is a friend, not yet. A breath like a blanket pulled up, not yet, not yet. There is a sleep that is like sinking into warm silt. And then there is this, the shallow draft of a boat too close to shore. Your dreams hang above you. Patient birds on a line, waiting to decide if you are worth the effort. When they come, they smell of resin and cedar, the sweet sting of wood that should not grow here. Sometimes they bring voices, a priest's murmuring river, a queen's laugh like broken glass, the thick quiet of sealed doors. Sometimes they bring nonsense, bees in the shape of letters, a fish made of fire, your mother's hands made of papyrus strips soaking in oil. You do not tell anyone your dreams. Dreams are a private god. You fold them into you, and the folding takes so long that morning finds you halfway through. The mat knows your body's complaints. There is the shoulder that learned to lower a mallet 1,000 times, and now sits higher than the other as if saving itself. There is the wrist that flares when the hammer misses, and you feel the shock travel up to your elbow like a snake. There are your knees, two old men who like to argue about stairs. The floor listens without judgment. If you are gentle, it is gentle back. If you roll too quickly, it reminds you it has no intention of yielding. You tuck your hand under the small of your back to warm it. The night is not cold, but the aching finds cold anyway, the way water finds holes. From the next room comes a murmur, and then the soft scrape of someone turning over, a hiss of breath. The village is a collection of these small, repeating noises. Reed against reed, skin against cloth, heel against earth. In the distance, a dog argues with another dog and then forgets why. You know the dog. It naps in the shadow of the granary at midday and lifts its head when the foreman's sandals pass. Even in the dark, the world is a set of familiar weights placed on a balance you cannot see. You know which way it will tip, because it always tips the same way. You have learned small tricks. You keep your work cloth folded under your head so it will be less cruel in the morning. You put your sandals with the straps facing toward you, because in dawn's grey you cannot waste time sorting right from left. You keep a sliver of date pressed against the wall by your mat, a secret sweetness you will forget until you need it most, and then your hand will find it like a blessing. You stretch your fingers before sleep, opening them slowly, listening to the tiny grinds within the joints, like sand in a small hourglass. If you open and close your hands 15 times before you drift, the first blows of the day will land cleaner. Someone told you that years ago. Perhaps no one did. Perhaps you told yourself, and the story stayed because it was useful. You think of water, and do not get up. The jar will be warm no matter when you drink it. The night does not make it cool, only still. The Nile is close and far at once. Close enough to smell, far enough to respect. You have watched it rise and fall the way you watch a king's temper. It gives and it takes, and the line on the bank that marks its height is not for you to argue with. You have seen men talk to the river as if it could be bargained with like a market seller. The river is more polite than a king. It does not pretend to hear. It passes, and you learn to hold your tongue around things that do not answer. The lamp, when you light it, is stingy with light and generous with smell. Tonight, You leave it dark. The moon is a softer witness. In the dark, you cannot see the splinter in your thumb that has been there long enough to feel like a prophecy. In the dark, your breath is an animal that curls up near your ribs and goes quiet. You remember a time when the dark frightened you, but the tomb teachers taught you otherwise. Darkness is not the opposite of work. You can work in it. Darkness is not emptiness. It is full of wall and ceiling and a floor that will punish you if you lie. You have learned to move your body by memory of pain. Duck here, turn there, shift weight, or the world will remind you how heavy it is. The room holds heat from the day and gives it back in size. A gnat finds your ear. You let it live because killing it would wake you further, and also because your hands are tired of making anything stop. The desert speaks a language of patience. All night it repeats the same two words. Again, in your sleep, the tomb repeats them too. Again, the line of men, the white of lime on your skin, the fine powder of stone rising like brightness inside the dark. Again, your hand writing someone else's name with shapes you cannot read. Again, your arm drawing the curve of a god's staff you will never touch without permission. Again, the foreman's marks, small bones the colour of flame, counted into a pot. You do not hate him as much at night. In the day, his voice is a sharp hook. At night, the hook is laid aside, and he becomes a man with his own mat, his own cracked heels, his own wife's breath nearby, his own worry that one of the boys will be bitten by a snake in his sleep, and he will be the one to find the stiffness before dawn. The night makes the village level. Foreman, carver, water carrier, child, widow, the woman who sells onions, the priest asleep with his mouth open. We all lie down. We all let the world go soft around us and hope it does not break while we are not watching. Your mother used to tell you the dead listen hardest before dawn. If you whispered then, they would carry your words with them. You do not speak aloud now. There is nothing you want from them that the living can give, but you let a thought form slowly, and you send it the way you might send a boat into current. A simple thing, a wish with no handle. Let tomorrow's stone be kinder. Let the chisel hold an edge. Let the dust not lodge so deep. The thought leaves you. The room does not answer. The room has never answered. It is a vessel for your breath and your sleep and your ache. It is enough. At the edge of seeing, something changes. The darkness loses a layer, and the cold that has been hiding inside the corners steps out, curious, and presses its nose to your bare legs. You pull the cloth higher, and numbness climbs your feet as if it had been waiting under the mat for a signal. There is a sound like a gourd rolling. The neighbour with the bad hip turning over. The dog remembers its argument and lets out a single half-hearted bark, then sighs, and the sigh drifts like smoke through the alley. Somewhere the first bird lifts its head to consider the idea of morning. You can feel the village gather itself, wrap its fingers around the handle of the day, and wait. You stay a little longer in the space between waking and the hour when names begin to be called. The best rest lives here, shallow but sweet, like water held in cupped hands. In this pause, the tomb is far away and the foreman has no mouth, and your hammer is a harmless shape. In this pause, you remember the field beyond the village where, as a child, you once lay on your back and tried to count the hawks. The sun made your eyes water and your head feel hollow. The hawks did not care. They were writing their own script across the sky. Sometimes you think your life is a tool held by larger hands, and sometimes you think it is only your life, nothing sacred, nothing planned. Either way, the mat receives you, and the floor holds you up and the night does not argue. Either way, your breath goes in and out like a small boat finding shore and the shore forgiving it for leaving. When sleep comes, it comes sideways. You do not invite it. It has its own key. It slips past your shoulders' protest and threads a thin cord through your thoughts, pulling them quietly one by one until they bend, until they lie down. You go with them. The night in the room becomes a night inside you, cool and simple. The reed mat forgets your weight, then remembers and forgives. The moon takes 2 steps backward and waits by the door. The river breathes. Even the dust finds a place to settle and stops pretending to be air. You will wake soon. There is always a moment when the desert draws a clean line around everything, and the foreman's foot taps and the first mallet lifts. But not yet. Feel the slow tide of your chest, the gentle pull beneath the ribs. Let the grit soften at the back of your tongue. Let the roof's soft settling become a lullaby. You have always known. There is nothing to lift here. Not yet. There is no stone to argue with, no wall to teach your hands, no tally marks to stand for your day. There is only the narrow room, faithful as a dog holding your shape in a quiet the colour of clay. Stay where you are a little longer. Let the wind wash its cool fingers over your face and under the edge of the blanket. Let the scent of river and burned oil pass through you without clinging. The world will ask for your body soon, and it will ask with both hands. For now, it asks for nothing. For now, it lets you be only a breath and a pulse, and the warm weight of yourself on a mat that knows your name even if no stone ever will. Rest now. The first thing you notice, before the sky even begins to pale, is the feel of the linen against your skin. Not soft linen, not the kind the priests wear when they walk like painted gods through temple halls. Yours is the coarse weave, spun from the stalks that the river gave up months ago, beaten and combed and twisted into thread by hands you will never hold. It has been worn so many times that the fibres have lost their stiffness, but not enough to forget the grit that lives between them. Every fold carries a little of yesterday's dust, worked into the weave like a second skin you did not choose. The kilt hangs from your hips, tied with a twisted cord that leaves a line in your waist by midday. It is the only garment between you and the desert's moods. Its chill before sunrise, its heat by the time the foreman starts counting blows. There is no shirt. Your shoulders and back are left to the sky, the same way the stone is left to the chisel. Sometimes, when the wind rises, it feels as though the air itself is sharpening you, stripping you thin. The sun will finish the job by noon. You do not change your kilt every day. No one does. The fabric takes on the shape of your work, stiffening where the sweat dries, darkening at the hem, where your hands have wiped themselves without thinking. Some mornings you turn it inside out, pretending this makes it cleaner. The pretense is as thin as the cloth itself, but it is a habit, and habits are a kind of armour. For your feet, there are sandals made from strips of palm fibre, woven by a neighbour whose own soles are cracked like old clay. The straps bite between your toes until the skin hardens and stops complaining. By midday, the dust will gather in the weave and rub your feet raw again. On bad days, the straps loosen too early, and you find yourself walking half barefoot across the stones. On worse days, you forget to notice. Around your head, if you are lucky, there is a strip of cloth tied to keep the sweat from stinging your eyes. If you are unlucky, it is the same strip you have worn for weeks, sour with salt, stiff enough to hold its shape when you untie it. It keeps the sun from burning your scalp, but not from cooking the thoughts underneath. Copper tools do not care what you wear. Stone does not care. The foreman does not care. But you care, in small ways you do not name. You smooth the folds before you step into the light, tug the cord tight so it sits straight, tie the headcloth so the knot rests where it should. These small acts are not for pride, exactly, but for the memory that you are still a person inside the work, not only a pair of arms. You remember a festival once, years ago, when the women of the village painted their eyes with green malachite and wore beads at their throats. The air was thick with roasting fish, and the cloth they wore was brighter than the midday sun. For a moment you imagined what it would be like to dress not for work, but for being seen. The thought felt dangerous then. It feels foolish now. Here, clothes are not for beauty. They are for covering the skin enough to work without it breaking too soon. When the wind shifts, it carries the smell of someone else's work. The leather of a water carrier's pouch. The resin from a carpenter's bench. Your own smell is ground into the cloth. Sweat, dust, oil from the copper blade you carried home yesterday. It is a scent you would not recognize if you did not live in it. You put on the kilt as you put on the day itself, without choice, without ceremony. Still, there is a moment before you step into the open air, when you press the folds into place and feel the cord at your waist, a moment when you know that what you wear is a kind of truth. It tells the story of your body, your labor, the heat and the dust that claim you. And as you walk toward the dawn, the linen shifts with you, whispering in its dry, frayed voice that it will carry this story until it falls apart. The horizon is lighter now. Soon the foreman will begin his count. But for a breath longer, you stand in the doorway feeling the cool edge of the air through the weave of your cloth, knowing that before the sun is high it will cling to you like a second skin, and by nightfall it will be heavy with the day's weight. And when you lie down again on the reed mat, the same dust will still be there, waiting, rest now, while the air is still soft. It begins before you even step outside. The air in the narrow room has shifted, heavier now, like a blanket someone has dipped in warm water and draped over your shoulders. Your eyes are still sticky with sleep, but your skin already knows what is waiting. The slow, creeping hand of the desert's breath sliding between your shoulder blades and resting there, patient and heavy. The night's coolness was shallow. The heat has been waiting underneath it all along, crouched like a predator, until the first hint of dawn lets it rise. You pull aside the curtain that serves as a door, and the world greets you with a flat, pale light. The sky is the color of unbaked clay, its edges smudged, and the sun is not yet a coin above the horizon. But you feel it. You feel it in the way the ground exhales, in the way the dust seems to loosen, ready to leap into the air at the first footfall, in the way your body remembers yesterday, and the day before, and every morning before that. Your first steps into the street stir the village awake. Doors open with soft cloth sighs, sandals scuff against packed dirt. A goat bleats as if complaining about something it can't name. A woman pours water into a clay jar, the splash dull and thick in the warm air. Far off, the river's dark gleam is hidden, but you can hear it, low, lazy, and unbothered by the sun it has known forever. The heat does not rush. It has no reason to. It will own the day soon enough. It begins in the soles of your feet, where the ground is already warm from the memory of yesterday. It rises through your calves as you walk, wrapping itself around your knees like a lazy snake. By the time you are halfway to the worksite, it will have found your chest, pressing gently, reminding you to breathe slower. You pass the same houses you pass every morning, mud brick walls the colour of bread crust, small windows shuttered against the day to come, a basket left outside with yesterday's fish bones drying in the air. A child squats in the dust, tracing shapes with a stick, shapes that will vanish as soon as someone walks past. You nod to the same old man, sitting cross-legged with his back to the wall, chewing slowly, eyes half closed as if trying to remember a dream. The morning heat is already on his face, and his skin has the sheen of someone who has accepted it without argument. By the time you reach the edge of the village, the horizon is brighter, and the sun's edge has begun to lift. It is not yet the cruel white disk it will become, but already it glows with the promise of work and thirst. You feel it on the tops of your shoulders, a touch at first, then a slow, deliberate weight. The air is still, but it feels thicker now, as if you have stepped into a place where breathing is work. Some mornings you try to remember the cool. You tell yourself there was a time, hours ago, when the night's breath lay over the village like a blessing, but the memory fades as the heat grows. Soon, the only truth is the present. The dampness beginning between your shoulder blades, the linen at your waist softening with sweat, the way your fingers swell slightly, making the grip on your tools more stubborn. Ahead, the path narrows between low walls and daped palms. Their leaves whisper against each other, the only movement in the still air. Beyond them, the desert waits, vast and flat, a pale sheet spread out to catch the sun. Somewhere under that sheet lies the tomb, half born, half buried, its walls waiting for your hands. The thought makes you straighten your back, though the heat pulls at you like an anchor. By the time you step out from the shade of the palms, The sun is full in your face. It has climbed only a finger's width above the horizon, yet its light is already sharp enough to make you squint. The ground seems brighter, the dust more restless. Each step sends a small cloud rising, and the wind, still soft from the night, carries it to your skin. It clings there, mixing with the sweat just beginning to form. You walk toward the valley with the other men, the heat gathering its strength around you. It will be worse by midday. It always is. But for now, in this fragile balance between cool night and burning day, you take one last slow breath. The air is warm enough to taste, dry, mineral, with a faint echo of the river far behind you. The foreman's voice will reach you soon. The tools will be in your hands. The heat will move from your skin into your bones, but not yet. For a few more steps, you are only a body moving through the soft light of morning, your shadow stretching long and thin ahead of you, as if it were hurrying to get out of the sun first. Rest in that thought, because soon the day will not rest for you. It comes before the sun has fully claimed the sky. In that hour when the air is already warm but not yet smothering, the men gather in a loose knot near the worksite, each carrying something wrapped in cloth, or cupped in a palm, or hidden in the fold of a kilt. No one speaks much. Voices are still slow from sleep, and the day ahead is heavy enough without wasting words on it. You find a patch of shade beneath a low wall of limestone blocks waiting to be carved, their pale faces already warm to the touch. Your breakfast is the same as yesterday, and the day before, and every day you can remember. A flat loaf of barley bread, dry enough to crumble when you break it, leaving fine dust on your fingers. You knock it lightly against your knee to shake out whatever grit has settled into it overnight, though there will always be some. It is impossible to keep dust from food here. You have long stopped trying. When you bite, it tastes of grain and stone in equal measure. Beside you, someone pours thick, cloudy beer into a shared cup. It is warm, even this early, and smells faintly of the clay jar it came from. You take a swallow and feel the sour tang cut through the dryness in your throat. The beer is not for pleasure. It is for weight in the belly, for strength to hold a mallet until your arms forget they were ever light. Still, on some mornings it is the only coolness you will taste before night. A handful of dates, sticky and dark, follows the bread. They leave a sweetness on your tongue that fights briefly with the sour of the beer before both settle into the same dull comfort. If you are lucky, there is a smear of soft cheese from a goat's milk, sharp and faintly gamey, spread thin enough to barely notice. You savour it anyway. Food is not about wanting here, it is about finishing. Around you, the sounds of eating are muted. Teeth on bread, the wet scrape of fingers pulling a date from its skin, the brief cough when a crumb catches in a dry throat. A fly lands on your wrist, tasting your sweat, and you flick it away without looking. Another takes its place. The flies here are tireless. So are you. You watch the foreman across the circle. He eats standing, breaking his bread into neat halves before biting. Even now, before the tools are lifted, he watches the men as if they might disappear. He swallows quickly, wipes his mouth with the back of his hand, and tips the last of his beer into his throat like a man impatient for work to begin. The sun is higher now, the light sharper, spilling over the edges of the wall and landing on your bare shoulders. The shade is shrinking. You finish the bread in 2 more bites, chew the last date slowly to make it last, and drain the warm beer from your cup. It sits heavy in your stomach, a stone for the day to balance on. A man near you tells a joke, something about a goat, a fisherman and a priest, but his voice is flat, his smile absent. You nod at the right moment, not because it's funny, but because it's easier than speaking. The work ahead is not softened by laughter, but it is made heavier by silence, and so you join in the half-hearted hum of voices. Someone calls your name. The foreman is ready. The last crumbs fall from your lap to the dust, where they disappear almost instantly under shuffling feet. You stand, brush the grain from your hands, and tie your headcloth tighter. The air is already different, less a promise, more a demand. You pick up your tools. Breakfast is gone from your thoughts before you take 3 steps. All that remains is the faint sweetness in your mouth, soon to be replaced by the taste of copper and stone dust. And as the sun clears the horizon, the day begins to eat you in return. The walk begins as a line, always a line, men strung together by the rhythm of their steps, by the crunch of sandals on dust, by the weight of the same day waiting ahead for each of you. You leave the low scatter of mud brick homes behind, their walls still holding the night's cool in the shadows, and step out into the open path. It is not a long journey, but it is long enough to strip away what remains of the morning's softness. The valley lies ahead, its mouth still hidden by the rise of the land, but you can feel its presence. The ground tilts toward it in a way you've learned to sense without thinking, as if all roads here sink toward the place where stone swallows men whole. Each step kicks a small cloud of dust into the air, and the air keeps it. It drifts around your knees, brushing the bare skin of your calves, coating the straps of your sandals, until they are the color of the earth. The sun lifts itself higher, slow but certain, and you begin to feel it on the back of your neck. Your headcloth absorbs the heat like a warning. Shadows shorten. The men ahead blur in the glare until they are only shapes, their outlines trembling in the rising light. You can hear their breathing when the wind stills, a quiet chorus of lungs adjusting to the climb. The smell changes as you leave the village behind. Less river, more stone, a sharpness in the air, dry and metallic, like a chisel left too long in the sun. Somewhere to your left, the wind stirs a scatter of brittle plants, their roots holding on to life in soil that offers nothing. You pass a cluster of rocks worn smooth by years of sandals and hooves, and a lone lizard watches you with slow, unblinking eyes before disappearing into a crack. You do not talk much on the walk. Words seem heavier here, as if the valley hears them and keeps them for itself. When someone does speak, it is usually a curse at a stone in the path, or a grunt at a strap that has loosened. The rest is silence, broken only by the soft slap of sandals, the occasional cough, and the foreman's voice when he calls for more speed. As the path narrows, the air begins to change again. The valley is close now. You can feel its breath, hot, still, and smelling faintly of dust that has not moved in centuries. The sun hits the rock walls ahead, and the light bounces back at you, a glare that seems to come from every direction at once. Your eyes narrow against it, and your skin feels as if it has been pulled closer to the bone. The first sight of the tomb entrance is not grand. It is a wound in the rock, dark and low, framed by the rough edges of unfinished stone. Around it, tools lean against makeshift racks, and baskets of rubble wait to be carried away. There is no gold here, no paint, no ceremony. That comes later for the dead. For you there is only the work. You stop just short of the shade that pools at the tomb's mouth, breathing in the last of the sunlit air before the foreman's voice sends you inside. The light in there will be dim, flickering from oil lamps, thick with the floating ghosts of yesterday's dust. The air will be cooler, yes, but it will be close, pressing, as if the rock itself wants to keep you. The man ahead of you steps forward, ducking his head, and disappears into the dark. Your turn comes. You adjust the cord at your waist, tighten your grip on the mallet, and follow. Behind you, the sun glints on the pale stone for a moment, before the valley swallows you whole, and in that instant, you know the day has truly begun. They wait for you where you left them yesterday, leaned against the rock wall just inside the tomb's mouth, their edges dulled by the hours they've already endured. You know each one by weight, by feel, by the way it sits in your hand as naturally as your own bones. The copper chisel, the wooden mallet, the flat-bladed adze, the smoother stone, all have the quiet patience of things that have no choice but to do what they were made for. The mallet is heavier than it looks. The wood is dry, worn smooth where your palm grips it. The grain darkened by years of sweat. You run your thumb over the handle without thinking, finding the shallow notch you carved into it long ago so you could tell it from the others. The notch fits you, not because it is deep, but because your skin has learned its exact place. When you lift it, the weight drags at your wrist in a way that feels both familiar and inevitable, as if the tool remembers every hour you've already given it. The chisels are narrower at the tips now, their edges rounded from stone's slow revenge. The copper glints dully in the lamplight, a glow that is neither warm nor cold. You've sharpened them countless times, pressing the edge against the grinding stone until the sound became a kind of breathing in your ears. But copper will never win against limestone forever. It wears down just as you do, and must be made new again. The adze, with its short wooden handle and angled blade, rests nearby. It is for smoothing, for shaving down the walls after the chisels have bitten deep. The handle has been patched where it cracked last season, bound with strips of leather that pull tighter in the heat. It will last until it doesn't, and then another will take its place, just as you will one day. You lift each tool in turn, testing the balance, feeling the weight in your shoulder, your elbow, your grip. The stone, smoother, rounded and cool, fits into your palm like a river pebble, though it has never known the river. It is for the end of the work, when the walls must be made ready for paint or carving. It does not see as many hours as the others, but it holds the final say on whether the surface will take the priest's brush cleanly. Nearby, baskets woven from reeds wait to be filled with rubble. The smaller ones will be carried out by boys and older men, the larger ones dragged by rope. There are no tools for carrying dust from your lungs, for scraping the grit from your teeth. Those jobs are left to time, and time is not generous. You tie the headcloth tighter, shift the mallet to your stronger hand and glance toward the others. Some are already at work, their strikes echoing in the stone corridor, each blow answered by a small rain of dust. The sound is rhythmic, almost like a chant, the kind of music you only hear underground. The foreman's shadow stretches across the wall, moving slowly, as if weighing the shape of every man here. He carries no tools of his own. His work is the tally marks on his board, the quick bark of his orders, the watchful eye that knows exactly how much stone should fall in a morning. Your tools, though, are your proof. The marks you leave in the wall are as close to a name as you will ever carve here. You step forward, mallet and chisel in hand, and the first strike of the day shudders up your arm, settling in your shoulder like an old friend. The dust rises immediately, floating in the lamplight before it sinks to your skin. The tools are part of you now, and you are part of the stone. The day will grind you both down, but for now, you work. It is never far from you, even when you cannot see him. You feel it, the weight of his gaze, the way it slides over your back, lingers on your hands, pauses at the chisel marks you leave in the stone. The foreman does not need to stand beside you to know when your swing has slowed, when your angle is off, when the sound of copper on limestone carries the wrong note. He hears it the way a jackal hears a weak step in the dark. He stands just far enough away to make you wonder if you're imagining it, leaning against the wall in the shadow of a support beam, arms crossed, tally board in hand. He doesn't speak often, but when he does, his voice slices the air cleanly. A man can work half the day in silence and still flinch when the foreman says his name. The sound is never loud. It doesn't need to be. You have seen what happens when the foreman's eye stops on someone too long. A shift in posture, a tightening of the mouth, and then the man is called aside, not for rest, but for correction. The correction might be words. Sometimes it is a demonstration, his own hands taking the tool, striking the wall with quick, precise blows that make yours seem like the work of a child. Once, years ago, you saw a man struck, not hard, not in a way that would leave a mark, but enough to make the point clear. The stone remembers such moments. So do you. There are two kinds of silence in the tomb. The first is the steady hum of work, the layered sound of chisels and mallets, the scrape of baskets being dragged, the mutter of men passing tools. The second is the silence that falls when the foreman moves. You hear his sandals shift against the dust, the soft tap of the tally board against his palm. Men adjust their stances without looking up. Tools are lifted a little higher, swung a little faster. The stone begins to give up its skin more eagerly under the sudden pressure of being watched. You have learned not to meet his eye unless spoken to. Looking directly at him feels like stepping into the sun too long, blinding, hot, and leaving you with the faint outline of his face burned into your vision. Still, there are moments when you sense something almost human in him. Once you caught him pausing at the edge of the chamber, watching the dust drift in the lamplight as if it were something worth keeping. Another time, when the day was unusually hot, you saw him loosen the tie of his headcloth just slightly, the smallest sign that he too was flesh under the linen. But these moments are rare, and they vanish quickly. His job is not to share the work, but to measure it, to keep the rhythm unbroken, the walls moving toward completion, the pharaoh's rest prepared on time. You are part of that rhythm, and the foreman's eye is the drumbeat that keeps it. When you shift your weight and wipe the sweat from your brow, you know he notices. When your grip slips and the chisel bites too shallow, you know he hears it. And when, in the rarest of moments, your strike lands just right, clean and deep, you think, though you will never be sure, that his gaze lingers for half a heartbeat longer before moving on. By midday, the foreman's presence is as constant as the dust in your lungs. You stop thinking of it as a person and start thinking of it as part of the tomb itself, a shadow that moves, a watchful shape carved into the air. And when you finally step outside into the blinding light for the short noon rest, you feel it lift from you like a weight you didn't know you'd been carrying, until it settles again when you walk back inside. It is always there. Before you even step inside the tomb, it waits, clinging to the air, coating the floor, hanging in the stillness like the ghost of every wall ever carved. It finds you before your tools do. One breath, and it is already on your tongue, bitter and dry, coating your teeth like the memory of something you can't wash away. The first strikes of the day send it rising in small clouds, pale in the lamplight. Each chisel bite shakes loose another handful of it, and the air swallows it without protest. The dust is older than you, older than the tomb, older than the name of the man it is being built for. It comes from stone that has been sleeping for centuries, and now that you've woken it, it does not forgive you. It does not sting all at once. The dust works slowly, like a thief with infinite patience. It settles into the corners of your eyes, where you can't quite blink it away. It clings to the inside of your nose until every breath tastes like powdered bone. You cough sometimes, but only when you forget not to. It is easier to let it settle in your lungs than to waste the strength trying to fight it. Everyone learns this. The heat doesn't help. The air inside the tomb is cooler than the desert sun, but close, heavy, unmoving. The dust floats in it like stars in a black sky, drifting endlessly, impossible to avoid. You learn to work with your mouth closed as much as you can, breathing shallowly through your nose, though it means the heat stays trapped in your chest. By midday, you feel it on your skin, not just a fine powder, but a second layer, a false skin the colour of limestone. It fills the lines on your hands, until your palms look carved. It cakes in the folds of your linen kilt, in your hair, in the sweat that never quite dries on your neck. When you wipe your brow, the cloth comes away pale, as though you've been erasing yourself one strike at a time. Sometimes the dust carries more than stone. Bits of the earth itself, smells that rise like memories, dry plant roots, faint traces of resin, the ghost of something that might have been water once. Once a man swore he could smell the skin of the dead in it, old and brittle, shaken loose from places no one had touched in lifetimes. He laughed when he said it, but his laugh ended in a cough that bent him double. At the end of the day, you carry the dust home like a gift no one wants. It comes with you into the narrow room, into the mat, into the folds of cloth you untie in the dark. It waits in the air while you sleep, ready to greet you again before dawn. Even when you wash, if there is enough water to spare, the dust hides in the cracks of your skin, rising again when the water dries. The foreman tells you not to think about it. Dust is part of the work, he says, the way sweat is part of heat, but you do think about it. In the quiet moments between blows, you think about how it settles in your chest, how it makes your breath just slightly shorter each season, how it might stay in you longer than you stay in this world. Still, when the chisel meets the stone and the next cloud rises, you don't stop. No one does. The dust is in the work and the work is in you. You strike again, and the air blooms pale around you, and you breathe it in because there is no other choice. And maybe, though you wouldn't say it aloud, you breathe it in because you've forgotten what air without it feels like. It is not really shade, not the kind that cools you. It is simply less sun, thin strips of relief where the rock juts out above the tomb entrance, casting a shadow that shrinks a little more each day. You step into it anyway because any distance from the full weight of the sky feels like mercy. Your shoulders sag just enough to remind you how long they've been carrying the mallet. The men gather without much talk, each peeling away from their corner of the work like stones rolling downhill. There is no rush. The foreman has already decided how long you will rest, and it will not be long. You sit on the ground, your back to the rock wall, knees up, letting your head tip forward as if the weight of it has finally become too much. The dust follows you here, on your skin, in your breath, in the pale film that dulls the colour of every loaf and date laid out on the ground. Your lunch is simple. Bread again, because bread is always here, a little softer than in the morning, warmed by the heat of your own body as you carried it tucked against your side. You break it carefully, not to share, though you would if asked, but because it feels wrong to rush this small piece of the day that belongs to you. The bread crumbles into your palm, and you chase the pieces with your fingers, licking away the grit without thinking about it. There are dates, their skins wrinkled and their sweetness concentrated to the point of stickiness. You bite into one slowly, letting it sit on your tongue, letting the sugar bloom in your mouth before you chew. For a moment, you almost forget the stone dust, almost forget the weight in your arms. A moment is all you get. Someone passes a small clay jar of beer, warm, thick, and faintly sour. You take a swallow, and it slides down your throat with the heaviness of liquid meant to fill rather than refresh. The warmth is strange but familiar, like drinking the day itself. You hand it back and wipe your mouth with the back of your hand, smearing the dust into a damp paste on your skin. The shade is narrow, and the men sit close, their knees touching, their breaths mingling in the close air. No one complains. There is a comfort in this small huddle, a reminder that you are not the only one being worn down by the work. A man beside you leans his head back against the stone, eyes closed, chewing slowly. Another adjusts the strap of his sandal without looking down, his fingers moving by habit. The foreman stays at the edge of the light, where he can see the whole group. He eats quickly, wiping his fingers on the hem of his kilt. He does not sit. You wonder if he knows how, or if standing has simply become the shape of his body. The sun creeps along the rock, and the line of shade thins. You can feel the heat pressing closer, as if it has been waiting for this moment to reclaim you. A fly lands on your wrist, and you brush it away lazily, knowing another will come. The air smells faintly of dates, sweat, and the resin from the torches inside the tomb. When the foreman straightens, the quiet ends. Men shift, stand, tie their headcloths tighter. You finish the last bite of bread, swallow the last bit of sweetness clinging to your teeth, and wipe your hands against your kilt. The shade is already behind you as you step forward, back into the glare, back into the work. And as you walk toward the mouth of the tomb again, the dust is there to greet you, as if it never left. The afternoon begins with a kind of surrender. By now the tools have shaped themselves into the rhythm of your hands, and your body has stopped asking for mercy. You swing the mallet not because you will it, but because the day demands it, and the demand feels older than you are. Inside the tomb, the air is thicker than in the morning. The heat has crept in through the stone, slow but relentless, so that even the shadows feel warm to the touch. The oil lamps burn lower now, their light less steady, the smell of their smoke settling in the corners like another layer of dust. You move in that dimness, your chisel biting into the limestone with each blow, the sound echoing in short, sharp bursts that fade too quickly. Time in here is not measured by the sun. You cannot see it, and it cannot see you. You measure it by the ache in your shoulders, the heaviness in your legs, the growing rawness in your throat. Each breath is warm and dry, carrying the taste of copper, stone, and sweat. Your hands have long since taken on the memory of the wall. You could close your eyes and still know exactly where to place the next strike. The foreman's voice comes and goes, sometimes near, sometimes far, never absent. He calls for baskets to be carried out, for edges to be sharpened, for the chisels to find cleaner lines. You answer without speaking. Through the steady continuation of your work, words are wasted here. The wall listens better to the mallet than to your mouth. Occasionally there is the hollow sound, the strike that finds a pocket in the rock, a small space where the stone has weakened over time. These moments are dangerous. The dust shifts differently, the fragments fall faster, and the air feels charged, as if the tomb itself is holding its breath. When it happens, the foreman steps closer, his shadow touching yours, his eyes sharp. Sometimes the hollow is harmless. Sometimes it is not. You keep your movements measured, your breathing slow, as the wall gives way in thin, deliberate layers. The hours wear on. The muscles between your shoulder blades throb, and your hands feel swollen around the handles of your tools. You take breaks, only when the foreman signals, leaning on the wall for a moment, your forehead resting against the cool patch of stone that will be hot again by morning. The pause is brief. Then you are back to it, carving the space that will one day be sealed forever. Outside, the sun begins its slow fall toward the horizon. Though you cannot see it, the change comes in the quality of the light filtering in from the entrance. Less harsh now, softer, like a tired hand settling over the valley. The air cools a little, and you feel it in the shallow breeze that occasionally slips through the corridor. It smells faintly of the desert beyond, sand, dry plants, the last warmth of the day. When the foreman finally calls an end, the sound is almost strange. The tools still in your hands feel reluctant to stop, as if they might keep working without you. You set them down carefully, the copper tips resting against the stone, the mallet lying on its side. Your fingers stay curled for a moment before they remember how to open. The baskets of rubble are stacked near the entrance, ready to be emptied tomorrow. The floor is littered with the day's fragments, small chips, pale dust, the curled shavings of stone smoothed away. You leave them where they are. The tomb keeps its own record of the work. Stepping outside is like surfacing from deep water. The light is low and gold, the heat softer, the air moving again. You blink against it. The world suddenly wider after hours of walls and lamplight. The sky is streaked with red and bronze, the sun sitting just above the edge of the hills. The valley is quiet now, the sounds of work fading one by one as the men gather their things. Your body is slower than your mind in these moments. Each step toward the path home feels heavier than the last, the mallet's weight still ghosting in your hands, the echo of the chisel still humming in your wrists. But the day is done. The stone can wait. Tomorrow it will be waiting still. It begins in silence. Not the heavy silence of the tomb, but the open kind. The kind that stretches out over the valley like a long exhale. The sun is low now, its edge slipping toward the horizon, and the light has turned the colour of baked honey. It touches the rock walls in broad, warm strokes, softening their edges, hiding the sharpness that cut into you all day. The men walk in a loose file, no one bothering to keep pace, except for the ones too tired to fall behind. Sandals scuff the ground in slow, dragging steps, the dust rising lazily, too heavy to bother climbing far. You feel it cling to your ankles, a dry bracelet that will stay with you until you wash, or until you lie down and let it follow you into sleep. The tools feel heavier now than they did in the morning. Your fingers ache from holding them for so many hours that even carrying them home feels like work. The mallet's handle is slick with dried sweat and the chisel's edge is blunt in your palm. You think of leaving them behind just for the night, but you never do. They are part of you as much as the aches in your shoulders or the dust in your lungs. The air cools as you walk, but only a little. The heat of the day still hangs low over the ground, rising in slow waves from the path. Somewhere to your right, a small bird flits between two rocks, its wings catching the last light. You follow its movement for a moment before it disappears into shadow. The sky above is wide and pale, streaked with the first hints of evening. The village comes into view as the path flattens. Mud brick walls glow in the fading light. The small openings of windows like dark eyes watching your return. Smoke rises from a few hearths, carrying the smell of bread baking, lentils boiling, the faint sweetness of dates warming over the fire. These smells reach you before the voices do. When you pass the first houses, children dart out to see who has returned, their bare feet kicking up dust as they run ahead to announce your arrival. A woman calls to someone inside, her voice sharp and warm at the same time. Somewhere, a goat complains in long, low bleats, tugging at the rope that ties it to a post. Your steps slow as you near your own door. The narrow street is shaded now, the coolness pooling in the spaces between walls. You pause just outside, letting your shoulders drop fully for the first time all day. The weight of the tools in your hands eases, though it doesn't vanish. You will still feel them when you lie down. Behind you, the rest of the men are still making their way into the village, their shadows long and bent in the last light. The foreman's voice carries faintly over the roofs, giving some order you no longer need to hear. The day is his until sunset. The night, at least, is yours. You step inside, the air dim and familiar, smelling faintly of clay and reed. The door curtain falls back into place, and the noise of the street fades to a low hum. The dust follows you in, settling on the floor, on the mat, in the folds of your kilt. It always will, but for now you are home. The tomb will wait. It always does. The first thing is always the water. Not to drink, at least not at first, but to wash. You kneel beside the clay jar in the corner, the one that sweats faintly in the evening cool, its sides beaded with a dampness. You almost envy. You tip it carefully, letting a thin stream pour into the shallow basin at your knees. The sound is soft, but it feels loud after the hush of the walk home. You splash your face, and the water turns cloudy at once, carrying away the first layer of stone dust. It's warm from the day, but it feels cool enough against your skin to make you pause, hands cupped, droplets slipping down your arms. You rub your forearms, watching the pale film swirl away into the basin, but you know it will never all leave. The dust lives deeper than the skin. Your feet come next, sandals left by the door. You run your fingers over the red marks the straps have left, pressing gently into the soreness before rinsing the grit away. Sometimes you find a blister, sometimes you don't look. You dry your feet on the hem of your kilt, the fabric already stiff with the sweat and dust of the day. If there is food cooking, the scent drifts in by now. Lentils if you are fortunate, onions if you are not, bread no matter what. You tear a piece from the loaf and set it aside for later, not eating yet. The first hunger you satisfy is for stillness. You sit on the mat and untie your headcloth, shaking out the damp folds. A small shower of dust falls to the floor. You set it beside you and lean back, stretching your spine until it protests. Your hands find the knots in your lower back, pressing and holding until the ache softens. The room is dim, lit only by the low glow of an oil lamp in the corner. Its light is unsteady, as though the day has tired it too. Sometimes a neighbour stops at the door to speak, but the words are always few. No one lingers. Evening is for retreat, for turning away from the noise of work. You hear the quiet sounds of the village winding down, a child's laughter breaking and fading, a jar being set carefully on the ground, a goat shifting in its pen. When you eat, it is slow. Bread dipped in a thin broth, lentils mashed into a paste, a date, if one remains from the morning's ration. The act of chewing feels almost strange after hours of breathing dust. and you savour the heaviness settling into your stomach. There is no fire for warmth tonight. It is not the season for it, but the air cools enough that you pull your cloth tighter around your shoulders. You lie back, staring at the low ceiling, tracing the familiar cracks with your eyes. Your fingers rest loosely on your chest, rising and falling with each breath, and for a moment you almost believe you are clean. Outside, the night deepens. Somewhere the river breathes its slow breath. The tomb waits in the dark hills, holding the day's work like a sealed jar. Tomorrow you will return to it. But tonight you let the weight slip from your shoulders. If only a little. The lamp flickers low. Your eyes close. The dust will still be in your hair, under your nails, in your lungs when you wake. But for now the day is over, and the quiet is enough. It is not a feast. It never is. Dinner is simply the last weight you place in your stomach before sleep, a way to fill the hollow so the body will stop complaining long enough to rest. The air in the room is cooler now, the door curtains shifting with the small, polite movements of the night wind. You sit cross-legged on the mat, the clay bowl in your lap warm against your skin. Tonight it is bread again. Always bread, torn into thick pieces and dipped into a thin stew of lentils. The stew is dark, nearly the colour of the dust, but it carries the faint scent of garlic and onion, enough to make you breathe a little deeper before the first bite. The bread softens quickly in the liquid, breaking apart in your fingers, leaving the broth clouded with crumbs. You eat it slowly, more out of habit than enjoyment, rolling each piece in your mouth until it gives up its weight and slides down your throat. A small dish of salted fish sits beside the bowl. The flesh is leathery, the salt heavy enough to make your lips dry. You pull it apart carefully, chewing until your jaw protests. The salt burns faintly, where the skin at the corners of your mouth is cracked, but it is a familiar sting, the kind that belongs to you as much as the work does. If there are dates left from the morning, you save them until the end. Tonight, there are 2. You pinch the skin between your fingers, feel the tacky sweetness before your teeth even touch it. The sugar spreads across your tongue, drowning out the salt for a brief, almost luxurious moment. You hold on to that taste as long as you can before it fades back into the heaviness of lentils and bread. The sounds of the village drift in as you eat. A clay jar being set down with a muffled thud, the soft thrum of someone singing under their breath while grinding grain for tomorrow's loaves, the occasional bark of a dog, low and unhurried, as if even it is too tired to shout. You drink last, a shallow cup of beer, warm and thick. It sits heavily in your belly, pushing back the ache of the day with a dull warmth. It is not refreshing, but it is grounding, pulling you a little further away from the stone corridors and closer to the quiet of the night. When the bowl is empty, you wipe your fingers on the hem of your kilt. The cloth is already stiff with the day's dust and sweat. The smear of lentils will make no difference. You set the empty bowl aside, leaning back against the wall, feeling the slow weight of fullness settle into your body. Dinner does not make you strong. It does not erase the fatigue or the ache in your joints or the grit in your lungs, but it is the last thing you will do before lying down, the final marker between the hours of labour and the hours of rest. And in that way, it is enough. Outside, the night has taken the sky completely. Tomorrow will come quickly. But for now, you sit in the dim lamplight, the taste of dates still faint on your tongue, and let the day fade. They begin softly, almost by accident. A low voice from the next room, a reply from farther down the street, the slow weaving of words into the dark. The workday has stripped away the sharpness from everyone's speech. What remains is the quiet cadence of people who have spent all their strength on stone and heat and dust, and now have only their voices left to move. You lie on your mat, the lamp guttering low beside you, and listen without meaning to. The stories drift through the walls, thin mud and reed no thicker than a breath, and you catch fragments as they pass. A man telling about the time the river rose too fast and swallowed the goat pens. A woman's laugh, warm and cracked, as she interrupts to correct him. Someone else swears they saw a serpent as long as 3 men near the quarry last season. No one believes him, but no one tells him to stop. The stories are never told straight. They curl and double back, heavy with pauses and changes in tone, embroidered with details that might be true or might only be needed. Someone begins a tale of a cursed tomb, and at once half the listeners groan they've heard it before, but they still let it unwind, because the telling is part of the night's work. The words are as much for passing the hours as for passing the truth. Sometimes a child speaks up, their voice bright in the dark, asking a question about the gods or the afterlife. The answers come slowly, wrapped in images they can hold in their hands, fields of reeds that never burn in the sun, rivers that run cool under a sky where the stars do not move. No one says that such places might not be waiting for them. No one says they are only for kings. Night is not the time for truths that bite. You close your eyes, letting the voices become shapes instead of words. They move through the room like smoke, settling in the corners, curling around the edges of your mat. The rhythm of them is older than the tomb, older than the village, older even than the dust in your lungs. The stories have been told in different mouths for as long as anyone has lived here, passed down like the tools that carve the stone, smoothed, worn, reshaped, but still able to cut. Someone sings for a while, low and without melody, just a string of words that sound more like the river than a song. Another voice joins in, not to harmonize, but to steady it. You breathe in time with the sound, your chest rising and falling like the small ripples left behind after a boat has passed. When the stories begin to fade, replaced by the deeper rhythm of sleeping breath, you keep listening for a while, chasing the last echoes before they vanish completely. Outside, the wind moves against the walls, carrying a faint scent of the desert at night. Cooler, softer, but still holding the heat it will give back tomorrow. You turn onto your side, the mat creaking under your weight, and pull the cloth higher over your shoulders. Someone in the next room sighs in their sleep. A dog shifts in the street. The foreman, wherever he lies, is silent now. The stories are over for the night, but the walls will hold them until morning, the same way they hold the heat. And as you drift, you carry them with you, not because you believe them, but because they make the darkness feel less empty. They come slowly, as if testing whether you're ready to leave the weight of the day behind. You lie on your reed mat, the dust still on your skin, the dull ache in your shoulders not quite gone, and at first the dreams feel no different from the thoughts you've been carrying since the lamps went out. But then the walls around you begin to loosen, and the air grows cooler, sweeter, touched with the scent of river reeds that have never known drought. The afterlife you've been promised since childhood is nothing like the one you've been building for the pharaoh. His will be gilded, walls covered in paint and stone cut so smooth you could drink your own reflection from it. Yours, they say, will be a field, an endless field, green and soft under your feet, where the sun is warm without burning, and the air moves just enough to cool your skin. You dream it the way you've been told, the field of reeds. You see yourself standing waist-deep in stalks that sway but never break, your hands brushing over their feathery tips. The sky is wide and gold at the edges, and somewhere a river winds through the green, water so clear you can see the smooth stones at the bottom. There is no dust here, no cough in your lungs. You breathe and feel the air fill you all the way to your fingertips. Sometimes the dream brings the people you've lost. Your mother, her hands clean and cool, pressing a loaf of soft bread into yours. A friend from the work gang who died one summer when the heat climbed too fast, now smiling as though the word tired has never existed. They speak, but you don't need to hear the words. Their faces tell you everything. There is no foreman here, no stone to carry, no tally marks waiting for the day to end. You dream of water more than anything. Not the thick, warm river you know, but water that runs cold over your feet, rushing and laughing like children at play. You kneel to drink, and it tastes like the first breath after a storm. In the dream, you drink until you are heavy with it, until it fills every hollow the day has left in you. But the dream is never entirely free of the world you know. The green fields sometimes shift to yellow at the edges, the reeds bowing as if under a weight you can't see, the clear water clouds for a moment faintly tinted with the colour of limestone dust. You look up and see the sun there, gentle, not cruel, and yet you feel a flicker of its old heat against your back. You tell yourself it is only memory. When the dream is good, you walk those fields until your legs forget how to ache. You find the bread always warm, the beer always cool, the fish always fresh from the river. You sleep under the stars and none fall. You rise with the dawn, and there is no day of work to follow, only more of the same peace. When the dream is not good, you still walk the fields, but they stretch away endlessly and you never quite reach the river. You feel the dust at the corners of your mouth, the weight of the mallet in your hand, though you can't remember why you brought it. In those nights, you wake before the dream finishes, lying in the dark with your heart beating slow and your chest heavy. But tonight, the dream is kind. The reeds sway gently, the water runs clear, the air hums softly, as though some invisible hand is smoothing the whole world flat. You lie down in the grass, your body lighter than it has been in years, and listen to the wind move over the field. Somewhere far away, the desert still waits, but here, in this place that might be real, or might only be mercy, you rest. And when the first edges of morning begin to press against the dream, you do not fight them. You rise from the water, step into the light, and carry the coolness with you as far as it will go. You don't think about it during the day, not if you want to keep working, but the truth is always there, tucked into the shadows of the tomb, coiled in the corners of the valley, whispering in the hot wind. Death is not a stranger here. It is a quiet neighbour who sometimes steps into the street, takes someone by the hand, and leads them away before the others can blink. The stone itself can kill you. One wrong strike, one hidden fault in the rock, and a slab that's been waiting centuries to fall will decide its time. You've seen it happen, a crack like the sound of the sky splitting open, then a rush of dust so thick it blinds you, followed by silence. The kind of silence that presses against your chest until you understand someone isn't breathing anymore. The foreman calls for the others to clear the rubble, but by then the work is no longer about building, it's about uncovering. Then there's the heat. It creeps into your bones like a slow fire, steady and patient. Some men don't notice until their thoughts start wandering, their hands growing clumsy with the tools. The foreman shouts, thinking it's laziness. But when the man doesn't answer, the truth becomes clear. By the time they carry him into the shade, his skin feels hotter than the stone he's been cutting, and his eyes are open but empty. Those who survive such a day are never the same. Those who don't are buried quickly, before the heat can take anyone else. The dust, too, is a killer. Not today, not tomorrow, but slowly, like a sandstorm trapped inside your lungs. You feel it most at night. Lying on the mat, the cough rising without warning. You turn to keep from waking the others, but the sound stays in your chest, rattling like a stone in a jar. The old men in the village cough like that all the time. No one calls it sickness. They just call it age. There are smaller deaths as well. The bite of a snake hiding under the rubble pile, the sting of a scorpion in the dark corner of a house, a fever that begins as nothing more than a shiver and ends before the week does, a bad cut from a chisel, turning red and swollen, the pain climbing up the arm like a slow tide. There is no physician for men like you, only river water, herbs and hope. Even the work outside the tomb holds danger. A slip on the path home in the deepening dusk, your ankle twisting under you, the sharp edge of a rock catching your side, falling into the river when you go to fill the jars, the current pulling you under before anyone notices, being in the wrong place when the foreman's temper breaks. And yet, you wake each day and step toward it willingly, not because you want to die, but because dying here is no more certain than living anywhere else. The river can drown a priest as easily as a builder. The sun can burn a king as surely as a farmer. The tomb takes its toll, but so does the hunger of doing nothing. So you carry the mallet. You breathe the dust. You drink the warm beer and walk the same path into the valley. Because until the day comes when death steps out from its place beside you and takes your arm, there is still the work, and the work is still yours. And when that day comes, you hope quietly, without saying it aloud, that someone will carry you into the field of reeds, where the